The words seemed to drift to Rand through wool stuffed in his ears. No way out. Thunder muttered overhead and was drowned in a slash of lightning. Have to find a way out. Goad called to them, demanding, appealing. The door slid another inch toward being open. A way out! Light filled the room, flooding vision. The air roared and burned. Rand felt himself picked up and dashed against the wall. He slid down in a heap, ears ringing and every hair on his body trying to stand on end. Dazed, he staggered to his feet. His knees wobbled, and he put a hand against the wall to steady himself. He looked around in amazement.
Hello, I'm Will, and this is my wife, Dallas.
Hi!
And this is Not the Beginning, a podcast where a longtime Wheel of Time fan and someone who's never read the series before read through each of the 14 books in this very long series. A warning, this podcast may not be suitable for younger audiences and will contain spoilers. If you've not read Robert Jordan's The Eye of the World, please proceed with caution.
On this episode of Not the Beginning, we will be diving in and discussing chapters 32 through 35 of The Eye of the World. I have not read past chapter 35, and Will is going to do his best not to bring anything from the rest of The Eye of the World or the other 13 books in during our discussion. So, as long as you've read through chapter 35, you should be good. If you haven't, I recommend pausing here and going to read them.
All right. Last time was kind of a mess. We had Rand, Mat, Perrin, Nynaeve all giving chapters. This time's a little bit more simple, with just Rand and Mat. We pick up with them in the Four Kings, where every inn except for the Dancing Cartman already has an entertainer. The innkeeper, Sam'l Hake, reluctantly lets them play in exchange for room and food. Rand and Mat are both convinced that Sam'l's going to rob them. While they're playing in the common room of the Dancing Cartman, they recognize a man who is wearing weird velvet clothes. They get confirmation that he's been hiding around from inn to inn, never staying in one place for long. They eventually recognize this man as Howell Goad, a merchant from Whitebridge who's apparently been following them. When the common room empties, Rand and Mat are led to the room where they're going to be staying for the night. Fearing that they're going to get robbed, they bar the door, but Howell Goad starts to break the door down. Eventually, they are kind of miraculously saved as lightning hits the room and they have a way out. They then quickly leave the Four Kings, with Rand and Mat hitching rides and wagons wherever they are able to. They're both recovering from the aftermath of this lightning strike. Mat has been blinded and Rand has seemingly fallen ill from the rain. While staying in one inn, though, they are confronted by Piter, the least capable dark friend ever. Further along the Caemlyn Road, Rand and Mat overhear a conversation between an innkeeper and what they guess is a Fade, who claims that Rand has stolen a Heronmark sword, kind of a way to identify Rand. They catch one last ride to Caemlyn from a man named Almond Blunt, who gives them a little bit of an explanation about what's happening in the royal court. Once in Caemlyn, they witness a small riot. Mat kind of freaks out about the size of the city, and they eventually head to the inn that Tom told them about back in Whitebridge, the Queen's Blessing. There they meet Basil Gill, the innkeeper, who gives them a little bit more information about Tom's history as court bard for Queen Morgase. So, unlike last episode, a lot of stuff happens in this episode very quickly.
Yeah. The entire plot happens in the first chapter.
Yeah, it's kind of like Four Kings and then
travel
hitchhiking.
Time. Yeah. They have a very eventful stay in the Four Kings, which was kind of alluded to being not great in the previous chapter. Because they said
they came to the Four Kings.
And everything went to shit.
Everything did go to shit.
Everything went to shit. Because they deal with the aftermath of what happened in the Four Kings the entire time. And not just Mat's blindness and Rand's sickness and whatnot.
But now people are looking for him.
Yeah, people are looking for them. And it's not a good time. Because he's got this heron blade.
Which is very identifiable.
Yeah. And so this kind of follows them into Caemlyn, and I feel like they're going to be dealing with the aftermath of what happened in the Four Kings for a very long time.
Maybe. They are in a city now, and so it's a lot easier to, hide when there are thousands of people as opposed to maybe hundreds.
Well, not with Mat freaking out the way he is.
Not with Mat freaking out.
Poor Mat.
Poor Mat. Mat's having a real hard time.
Oh, I just felt so... I just want to wrap him up in a blanket and give him a hug.
Kind of weird, because most people that I have seen react to this part of the book just hate Mat. so much.
No, poor boy is having like panic attacks and he's clearly affected by this dagger, and I just want to take the dagger away from him, and I want to wrap him up in a little blanket, and I want to give him a hug, and like be like, shh, it's okay.
Clearly, neither of them are prepared for the size of a real city.
No, and it's not just the city that has me feeling for Matt, because he's like, the entire time he's blind, he's just so vulnerable. And he says to Rand several times, like, you're not gonna leave me, right? And it's so sad. And he's homesick. And he was the one who wanted to leave the Two Rivers the most. He was so excited for an adventure. And even when he got this stupid dagger, he was like, wanting to look for gold. And now he just wants his mom. I think he literally says at one point, he's like, I just want my mother. And I'm just like, baby, no.
Yeah, he's having a real hard time. He also seems the most like himself in this part. And I think, and this is purely a thought I have, is that whatever he's doing, he especially seems the most like himself when he is trying to help Rand. So when they get hit by lightning, or when the room gets hit by lightning, Matt gets blinded, but is otherwise entirely fine. But Rand starts to fall sick because they spend a lot of time just traveling in the rain.
But it takes him a long time to get sick. So he gets sick, but then he gets a little bit better. And then all of a sudden, it's like a switch flipped, and he was just like down for the count, like completely ill.
Yeah,
and I have thoughts, but we will get to those.
I think that Matt having to take care of Rand and kind of be selfless somehow, this is purely my thought, is somehow counteracting the dagger's effects.
I think also him being blind,
can't see anything to be greedy.
That I think it's part of it. I think like he's already been made vulnerable by the fact that he can't see. And we don't really see Rand get super sick until later, and that's when Matt has to be selfless. But he is vulnerable even at the beginning when he's blind, and Rand just seems like he has a little bit of a cold and he's a little bit tired. He's so vulnerable. And he asks me several times, like, you're not going to leave me. You're not going to leave me behind, right? And he's like clutching onto Rand's hand, and he's just...
So my theory is that basically the dagger is carrying the like taint of Shadar Logoth, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically human greed and selfishness. So when Matt has to be selfless, that is basically putting up a little bit of a defense against the dagger. He's acting the direct opposite of how the dagger is trying to influence him to be. And so by doing that, he's able to reclaim a little bit more of himself.
I think to add on to that, though, it's not just greed. I feel like it's this element of strength that the dagger also gives him. So maybe like in the moment, because he's blind, he's innately vulnerable. That also counteracts the effects of the blade a little bit. Because this blade is kind of making him feel invincible. And because greedy people don't just want things, they tend to also feel like the feeling of being invincible and greed kind of tend to go together.
Okay, I can see that.
And I think that's what this is with this blade. He just has like this element of confidence, which might have been what drew him to the blade to begin with.
Maybe. I mean, I think what drew him to the blade to begin with is Matt's like, ooh, shiny.
But he also is like he's just very charismatic. He has a lot of confidence. He's a very confident person. We haven't had a chapter in Matt's head yet, but there is no way Matt would ever go, Perrin or Rand would know what to do with this girl.
Are you sure about that?
Matt would go, Matt knows what to do with this girl. Or boy. Because
I think that's only the case when things are going well for Matt. If things start going badly, like if he's not just like trying to like pick someone up, if he's like in a relationship and things start to get complicated in the relationship, Matt's gonna go, I think Perrin or Rand could handle this better than I ever will be able to.
I don't think he would say that. I think he would just be like, this isn't for me, and then dip out.
Maybe. Matt strikes me as a very unattached person.
He seems like a love him and leave him kind of guy.
He does. I know things, but he seems like very much so.
Yeah, my takeaway from this section is I have two takeaways. One is poor Matt just needs a hug.
Matt needs a hug.
Matt needs a hug. And I have thoughts about Rand.
You do have thoughts about Rand, and we'll get to that. There's one more thing that with the dagger I want to talk about, though, which is that Matt didn't seem very surprised or anxious about Sam'el Hake potentially trying to rob them. And I think that's kind of one of those things where you assume the worst and are relieved when you find out that it is the worst.
I did think that was weird. I thought it was strangely confident of him, which I think plays into the dagger gives you this innate confidence. But that kind of goes against, he's always protecting the dagger. I think part of it is that he knows that Sam'el didn't see the dagger.
It could be, but he was also very suspicious of everybody when they were traveling. And
That's true. Yeah, it could be more of confirmation.
Right, he knows that Sam'el's going to try and rob them, so he's like, all right, I can deal with that. Instead of being tortured by the idea that these random passersby are going to try and rob him.
Yeah, I can see that being the logic.
Maybe that gives him the breathing room he needs to kind of put up walls against the dagger in the small capacity that he can, because he's clearly still very troubled.
And there's actually one more thing about the dagger. He uses it finally in this section.
He almost uses it.
And so you didn't touch on this in the summary, but when Rand is sick, when he gets super sick, not just that it could be from the rain,
mm-hmm.
It's super ass sick that Rand gets, and he's totally laid up, and Matt has to end up really taking care of him. A woman comes into the barn that they're staying in and tries to offer her help, and then ends up trying to stab Matt. I guess that help is by help she meant I'ma kill you.
I mean, if you're dead, you can't be sick.
But she didn't even try to stab Rand. She tried to stab Matt.
Which is probably the right choice.
But
Because what are you going to do? Stab the person who can fight back or stab the, deathly ill person in the hay?
Fair. But, so he tries to stab Matt, and he pulls out the dagger, and she seems to recognize it.
I think I read that as it's just, oh man, he has a dagger. I thought he was I thought the one with the sword was sick, but this dude has a dagger. He also had disarmed her.
I just read it as it seemed like there was a flicker of recognition on her face when she saw the dagger.
I don't think that was the case. I mean, what would a random dark friend know about anything? Any object inside Shadar Logoth?
I don't know. I didn't assume she was just a random dark friend. But
yeah. She wasn't named. She's an unnamed character in the Wheel of Time. There aren't very many of those. Robert Jordan didn't have to name Sam'el Hake. He could have just been suspicious skinny innkeeper.
Was he skinny?
Yes. This is where...
That is suspicious for an innkeeper.
Rand, after this, has a phobia against skinny innkeepers, and they get to the Queen's Blessing, and he's like, oh, thank God Basil Gill's fat.
I was wondering why he went on this whole thing about how he's fat and that the cook is fat. I mean, there is also the adage, never trust a skinny cook.
Right.
But...
I think that also extends to innkeepers in medieval times. If I go to a medieval times and my random server who's going to bring me my soda is skinny, I'm going to complain to management.
Why would we ever go to medieval times when we could just go to the Maryland Renaissance Fair?
That's true.
The food is better. The jousting is not better because they use the medieval times jousters now, and it's not even real jousting.
But at worst, it's the same.
No, it's not the same. There was real jousting at the Maryland Renaissance Fair.
At worst, it's the same as medieval times. That's the floor. And honestly, it's not that bad of a floor. I've been to medieval times 2 or 3 times total, and the food was good. The food in medieval times is okay. It's not as good as the Renaissance Festival, but it is okay.
Yeah.
And the jousting is kind of fun. It's sporty.
It's not real jousting, though.
It's definitely not real jousting, and I do really miss that at the Renaissance Festival.
Yeah, that was great. This is not a Maryland Renaissance Festival podcast.
No. And I kind of don't remember where we were before now. We were talking about the woman
innkeeper,
the fat innkeeper, yes. Which was a tangent on the random woman who tried to stab Matt.
And he holds a dagger up to her throat and is about to kill her, and Rand's like, "You're not a dark friend," and Matt's like, "But she is." And he's like,
"That's fair."
Yeah, I kind of am like, Rand, why are you stopping her? Why are you stopping Matt from killing this woman?
If a Nazi tries to kill you, you are more than justified in killing the Nazi in self-defense.
Yeah.
And these people are uber Nazis. They want the Dark One to rule. Granted, they don't call him the Dark One, they call him the Great Lord of the Dark, as our friend Piter has enlightened us. But,
yeah, she is the most effective of the Dark Friends, I think, that we meet.
I feel like Hal Gode could have been much more effective until he got struck by lightning, which I'm very conveniently giving you an avenue to talk about the lightning strike.
You mean when he was struck by lightning or when Rand hit him with some lightning?
Did Rand hit him with lightning?
I think so.
Okay, that's fair.
So, because here's my thought. Here's my thought process. They are both stressed out.
Uh-huh.
The three boys that we were focusing on this story
Yep.
are Rand, Matt, and Perrin.
Yep.
Because Moraine thinks that one of them is the Dragon Reborn.
Volcano Man Reborn.
Volcano Man Reborn. So we can assume that if they are possibly the Dragon Reborn, one of them or all of them can channel.
Okay.
We've seen some glimpses into Perrin, and he's got some weird stuff going on with wolves.
But that's not necessarily attached to channeling.
Right. And then we have the situation where the other two boys are together in a room, panicking about getting out, and then lightning hits very conveniently at the room that they're in and the person that they're trying to run away from that gives them a way out
Yep.
at a very convenient time.
Yes.
Lightning doesn't act that way.
It does not.
So it was one of the two.
It was one.
It was one of the
sure.
two made the lightning happen.
Okay.
And the aftermath, we see that Matt is blind and Rand is a little bit sick. So, and what we know about channeling,
We were very conveniently given an explanation from Moraine a couple chapters back.
right, is that you usually get really sick. And so maybe Matt being blind could be part of it. Maybe Rand being a little bit sick could be part of it. But he's only a little bit sick, and Matt really only has the blindness. They both don't seem to have a fever at that point. Nynaeve and Moraine both go into this whole thing about going down with a fever for a few hours and then popping back up and being completely fine. And who does that happen to?
It does happen to Rand.
Rand.
I would like to give you a word of the day, a Wheel of Time word of the day, that you will find out about, I believe, in the next bit, maybe in episode 9.
So I guess spoiler?
It's a word. ta'veren. You'll find out about it. There's a very convenient character who explains what ta'veren are. I'm not going to do it now, because read and find out. And the lightning strike could be very easily explained by the ta'veren phenomenon.
Is ta'veren like Speed Force?
Sorta, but a lot less so.
For those of you who don't know about Speed Force, it is the power that runs the Flash universe. And
It just runs the Flash.
it just runs the Flash. Whatever.
It's the
It could
DC
run-
Comics universe.
It could run the Flash universe too.
It could
it's
because
Speed
it's
Force.
the Speed Force, but it doesn't because it's the Speed Force.
A few years ago, Baltimore Comic Con, we were in a panel with the guy who invented the Speed Force, and he basically said that he created the term Speed Force to explain a plot that he couldn't think of an actual reason to, and his script was due. So he just called it the
Speed
Speed Force, and now it is used for all kinds of explanations for things. So when things are unexplained and have a really bad explanation, I call it the Speed Force explanation.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that with the ta'veren phenomenon, as I'm naming it. It's not. It's just called the ta'veren. They're just called ta'veren. But you'll find out more about it, and when we get to it in your reading, I will talk about it.
Can I get you to stop doing things like that? Because it always makes me want to look it up. Like, you did this with me. You did this to me with Tom. Apparently there's some sort of ship with Tom that we find out that happened apparently in this book that we find out about like 17 books from now. And I want to Google it to find out who it's with. And I
find out.
can't. Because
I'm just trying to give you a little bit of the experience of reading The Wheel of Time as it was released. Which is, there are these questions, and at some point,
No.
Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson was like, yeah, it's obvious. And then it's like, no.
But
It wasn't.
if I was reading these without talking about it in between, I wouldn't have known about ta'veren before I got to it. So stop it.
It
That's his evil laugh.
is.
But yeah, so Rand can channel.
Maybe. Not confirmed. You think Rand can channel.
Rand can channel. I say it with the confidence that I said that Tam was not Rand's birth dad, and guess what? I was right. So Rand can
Okay.
channel.
Okay. It's a 14-book series. You're going to be wrong at least once, and this may or may not be it, because I'm really good at talking in vague terms.
Given. Rand can channel.
Heh.
Tom's not
That's
dead
a thing.
either.
Tom's
And
not dead?
Tom's not dead.
And why? You just no body, no crime.
No body, no crime.
All right.
Also, the innkeeper doesn't think that he's dead. So when
No.
they get to the Queen's Blessing, the innkeeper, they tell this innkeeper who was a friend of Tom that Tom's dead, because he's like, why do you have Tom's flute? And so the Rand tells him the story, and he goes, Tom's not dead.
Basil Gill is doing the medieval equivalent of no body, no crime.
Yeah, he's like, Tom's not dead.
Because he literally says, I'll believe it when I see his corpse.
Yeah. No body, no crime.
But Basil Gill seems like a good dude, and Tom apparently has quite the history.
Is the ship with the Queen? Because it's basically implied that he was sleeping with the Queen.
It is basically implied he was sleeping with the Queen, because he was court barred and driven out of town. So what happened with Tom is he left. He left because of the trouble with his nephew in the Aes Sedai, where it was very heavily implied that he being Tom's nephew, could channel.
Yeah.
So Tom left in a hurry without telling anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes back, and Morghese is like, why the fuck did you leave? Guard captain, please kill him. And Tom was like, okay, bye. I'm going to go be a Gleeman now. And this is why Tom is so much better than all the other Gleemen.
Yeah, because he was the court jester.
He was the court bard, which is very different than jester.
I feel like they have the same. I feel like they're probably on the same socio class scale though, because they get
maybe, but like a court bard, especially in the world of the Wheel of Time, is supposed to be able to like recite like highbrow stories and have a knowledge.
That too, but
it's much more like a D&D bard than like a jester.
Yes, but what I'm saying about like the class level is that like in medieval times, the jester was one of the only people who could criticize the king. So it's a very advantageous position. And so I feel like bard and jester, while they serve two different purposes, have the same. He's sleeping with the queen, so clearly he has some sort of elevated status.
There's no way a jester would be able to sleep with a monarch. I don't think so.
Happens.
I mean, it probably happened because people are horny as shit, but
the queen probably slept with a jester quite frequently.
Yeah, maybe, but
or at least a princess, or like.
Probably
or
a princess.
Because I don't want to.
That's true. Some sort of non-reigning royal probably did, but I'd be very surprised if, because like it was like an open secret for Tom and Morghese.
Yeah.
Basil Gill knew about it. The court knew about it, and I just don't see that happening with a jester.
I feel like they have the same advantageous position, and so it doesn't surprise me that he would have had a relationship with the queen. Also because the queen, even if Tom had some sort of power inside being the court bard, the queen still holds some sort of power over him, sort of, because she's the monarch. So, like, the queen can sleep with whoever she wants.
Fun fact about Andor, which is the country that Caemlyn is the capital of, it only has queens.
I like it.
There are no male monarchs allowed here.
Well, in a world where Vagina Island exists.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see the logic of that extending, like, if men who are able to channel magic end up turning into volcanoes.
You maybe don't want to risk that in a monarch.
Yeah.
Because there's a period before they turn into a volcano where they're human and are crazy.
A Volcano Man was a ruler of something because he lived in a big old castle and then killed a whole bunch of people.
He did kill a bunch of people. He killed his family.
And a whole bunch of other people.
And a bunch of servants, yes. But mostly his family.
And all of the servants that lived in his big-ass house.
That's true.
He probably killed more servants than he did family members.
I don't know. It was implied he had a very big family.
Probably also, if you had a big family, each one of those people probably had at least 3 or 4 attendants.
That's true.
That's how rich families work.
That's true. He did.
There's probably at least 3 or 4 servants per person in the household.
Yeah.
So, by numbers, he killed more servants than he did his own family.
Okay. I can get behind that logic. But yes, I think you probably don't want to risk kings so much as you do. And especially because something we learned here is that Caemlyn has a history of sending their queens or the term is daughter heir to Tar Valon, Vagina Island, to learn from the Aes Sedai.
Yes, and that is the Aes Sedai that Matt and Rand learn about when they're on the way to Caemlyn.
Fucking Lyda.
Is, all right.
Man, I got opinions about Elida, and most of them are that she's the worst.
Okay. But yeah, so they're like when they're heading to Camelin with the guy that is basically contracted to turn them in. Smart move on Rand's part. So there's the whole thing where the guy is talking to one of the innkeepers about how
Yeah, the Fade.
the Fade is talking. Is it a Fade?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not Howlgode, because Howlgode's dead.
Well, no, it seems like Howlgode is the one looking.
Yeah, but
For him.
Howlgode got hit by lightning.
Anyway, so someone is looking for Matt and Rand.
Yeah.
Because Rand apparently stole his Heron Blade.
Yeah.
And so this person tells the innkeeper and a traveler about it. And so the innkeeper tells they basically tell this traveler and the innkeeper that like we will give you money if you are able to turn these boys into us.
Right.
And then Rand, in a fit of brilliance, sarcasm, walks up to said traveler and is like, "Hey, can we travel with you?"
I thought it was basically implied that the traveler knew he was there.
Later. That's after.
Eh,
That's after Rand's fit of... Because I take notes as I go.
okay.
And I was like, really? Really, Rand?
But that
you're gonna
conversation
hear
also
that
had-
you're gonna hear that conversation and then walk up to the man that was basically contracted to kidnap you.
But that conversation also had the man, Almond Bunt, be like, "You're crazy,"
Still,
to the innkeeper. Because he clearly didn't trust the innkeeper,
he didn't. It's
and he
still
didn't
not
trust
a
the
smart,
stranger.
It's not a smart move on Rand's part, and Matt points that out, and he's like, "Are you really sure?" And then Rand's just like, "YOLO, I'm gonna walk right up to him and be like, 'Can I get in your carriage, please?'"
To be fair on both points. One, when has it ever been said that Rand is smart? And two, when has it... Recently, Matt has been very distrustful of everybody, so it'd be weird for him to not be distrustful of this random person.
I also understand why he's so distrustful of anyone, Dagger aside, because
Are
people
out to get him.
are out to get him. Anyway, so they travel with this guy, and they're on the way to Camelin, and this guy,
Almond Bunt.
the Bunt guy, is just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking the entire way to Camelin.
And Rand falls asleep.
Well, he just got over this really big channeling sickness. So he's like talking and talking and talking and talk, and tells them about an Aes Sedai that is in Camelin. And so
The Queen's advisor.
And so Rand and Matt's plan is to at least go find that Aes Sedai and be like, "We know Moraine and Lan. Please help us."
Yep. It should be noted, Almond Bunt does not like that the Queen has an Aes Sedai advisor.
No, he does not. And he
also thinks that Elaine, the daughter heir, should go to, I want to say, Ilion to train there instead of to Tar Valon.
Mhm.
He's just like, monarchy should entirely change their traditions and send the daughter heir somewhere else to learn, and should send the first Prince of the Sword, Gawain, also somewhere to just like learn from random town guards. And I'm sorry, but even if you think that Aes Sedai are awful, in what world do you put random town guards and warders on the same level?
Well, because isn't it that the first prince and the first daughter,
The daughter heir.
the daughter heir, go, like the daughter heir goes to train to be an Aes Sedai because apparently they can all channel?
No, they just all go to Tar Valon to learn from the Aes Sedai.
And then the men go and learn to be a warder.
Yeah.
In theory, so that if I guess their sister can channel, they'd be their sister's warder. I don't know.
Yikes.
So.
But that's actually kind of probably about accurate. You don't know enough about the Warder Bond to know why it's a yikes.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's for the same reason that I ship Moraine and Lan. So,
Yikes.
yeah.
But I mean, you can also see like how it's
But that's not confirmed, so I don't actually know.
That's true. And you can also see how it could just be like a symbolic thing, right? Like
Yeah.
the first Prince of the Sword is just like a symbolic warder to somebody who is a symbolic Aes Sedai. Because
Yeah.
we know that Morghese can't channel. Like, at no point has anybody said Morghese can channel.
Right.
She just went to Tar Valon to learn.
Yeah.
After a succession crisis, there's a whole bunch of Camelin history in this section.
Which I glossed over like Rand was sleeping.
It's kind of important.
We'll figure it out later.
The important bits do get brought back up, but essentially there was some sort of succession war that led to Morghese being on the throne. Terengil Damodred married Morghese, and Terengil was also married to the previous queen.
Yikes.
A little bit of a yikes.
Seeing as the previous queen was probably Morghese's mother.
No.
No? Okay.
No. They're kind of related, but in the same way that, like,
Queen Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots, were related?
sort of. I forget which one Mary Queen of Scots was. She wasn't Henry's child, was she?
Like a cousin or
Yeah,
something.
like some cousin distant enough to be considered royal, but not very
Oh, because
close.
she was the Queen of Scotland.
Yeah.
And also somehow England, because all of that. It's been a while, and most of my knowledge about the relationship between Mary, Queen of Scots, and Queen Elizabeth II, or Queen Elizabeth I, is through the TV show Reign, which was not accurate whatsoever.
Yikes.
It was a great show, though. Costuming was absolutely not to period, but also gorgeous.
It was a CW show. Of course it wasn't. Anyway, Morghese is like a distant relative of that former queen whose name is Tigraine, and Tarangale married both of them. And so Tarangale is Elaine and Gawain's father. But he's dead now. He died before Tom was in a relationship with...
Tarangale? Is that who it is?
Yes, Tarangale Damodred.
Tarangale is basically the Marjorie of Wheel of Time. Just marrying a bunch of kings.
Yeah. He's from a country called Kyrian, which we'll probably touch on later, I think. Maybe. Kind of. Sort of. It definitely isn't a major feature of some of the books. Not at all.
I hate you.
Something you should note that it's not surprising you didn't pick up on, because he's kind of a throwaway character. We have Tarangale Damodred and also Moraine Damodred.
Didn't even see that.
It's very, very easy to miss.
Yeah, it was just like, I think that was like the last couple pages of, like, it was like right in the middle of my reading.
Almond Bunt says stuff about it.
Again, I was tuning him out just like Rand was. And also, like, this is just, it's such a long book series.
It's
and
so
like,
long.
this is, I've probably said it before. I'm going to say it several times throughout this entire podcast. It'll probably take about 7 years for me to read these books. This is not my genre.
No.
This is not the genre I typically read. And so while I'm enjoying it, I just can't tune into all of those little details.
I don't think you're supposed to.
I'm really in it. I usually pick up a book, and I pick up like a 300-page book, and that's like a good-sized book to me. That's like a good read, and that takes me like maybe 2 or 3 days to get through.
Not 600 or 700.
Not 600 or 700.
Or in the case of the Stormlight Archive, 1200.
Jesus. I just like, I'm in it for the fluff and the romance, which is why we talk about ships so much on this podcast, because I'm gonna read into the subtext.
Yeah.
I'm guns to do it.
I think we talked about this last episode with how confusing Perrin's section was. I think another strength of Jordan's writing here is that Almond Bunt is supposed to be boring.
Yeah, I just didn't
And
care.
so you read it and you gloss over it, and like stuff comes up later and you're like, oh, I should have picked up on that when it was told to me the first time. And that just kind of like enhances the whole thing, because you get told stuff in such a boring way sometimes. Because like Rand's just riding in a cart. Rand's focus is, I'm trying to stay awake because this nice man is giving us a ride. And Rand glosses over it, and so you're also supposed to gloss over it.
Right, and I think that is very effective in Robert Jordan's writing. I think I just also, like, if I didn't have you as a guide with this, I would probably be really confused most of the time. Because I just don't pick up on these things. What I'm picking up on, when I read a book for the characters, not the plot. Yeah. Everything that I read, like, for me, a 5-star book is something that was so driven by character that the plot didn't even matter. And this is a very plot-heavy book.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it gets a little bit lost, which I think it's a good thing that we're doing this podcast in this format and that we stop and talk about it, because it's helping me remember bits of plot. Whereas if I was just reading this straight through, I would have already forgotten what happened in the beginning, because I didn't sit and talk about it out loud. Now that I've talked about it out loud, it's more likely to like stay in my memory.
Right.
Or I can do the cringeworthy thing of going back and listening to my own podcast to figure out what the heck was happening.
I don't know why that's that cringeworthy.
I don't like listening to myself talk.
I don't either, and yet I edit our episodes. I spend
That is why I have you edit them.
I spend several hours editing these, and I have to listen to my own voice for so much of it that I've kind of gotten over it. That's one of the reasons I have you edit the podcast, and 2, because I'm running another book blog and writing a novel and have a job, so. Yes. I mean, I also have a job. I have a more demanding job than you do sometimes.
Sometimes.
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
My job isn't super stressful right now. But that's besides the point. We're in Caemlyn.
You guys just got to learn a little bit more about us. We're in Caemlyn.
Well, actually, let's go back a little bit and talk about that woman with the dagger, because we didn't fully explain the dagger or any of the weird dreams.
It's like that tumbler knife.
That tumbler knife?
The one that gets hot so that when you slice bread, it makes toast.
That is basically word for word a description of a knife in Hitchhiker's Guide.
And if someone's like, oh, imagine stabbing that with someone. It's like, well, it would instantly
Stabbing that with someone?
Or stabbing someone with that knife.
Yeah.
Like, imagine stabbing someone with the hot knife. Then, it's like, why would you stab someone if you could have toast? Clearly,
Gross.
This woman falls into the imagine what would happen if you could stab someone with that. Because she tries to stab Matt with a really hot knife, and it goes into some wood. It goes into like a banister in the barn, and it starts to sizzle, and the barn almost catches on fire, or does, because if we listen to the rumors that happen later, I'm pretty sure someone talked about a previous town's barn catching on fire and burning down.
I did not catch that.
And I was like, I think that's the hot tumbler knife.
But they also just like chucked it in a bucket of water,
and
like,
it's steamed.
If it's still creating heat, you just kind of need to like suspend it, because it's just always going to be creating heat.
I'm thinking, if that was the barn that caught on fire, what happened is that all of the water evaporated because of the heat, and then the bucket caught on fire,
right?
And then the barn caught on fire because it's a hot knife that can make toast, but she decided to stab people with it because she's a
dark friend. She's trying to kill people.
In terms of the Tumblr meme, she would be a Gryffindor, because imagine stabbing someone with that knife.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's the meme. So there's like someone like the Hufflepuff is like, look, it's a bread that when you cut it, it makes toast. And the Gryffindor is like, imagine stabbing that or stabbing someone with that knife. And then the the Ravenclaw is like, it would instantly cauterize the wound, so it would be ineffective. And a Slytherin goes, not if you want information. And a Hufflepuff goes, why would you be stabbing people if you could have toast?
Very fair. I would rather have toast than stab someone. I would also rather have toast than stab wound. But that's not one of the options. Yeah.
So, henceforth known as the tumbler knife.
Okay. I am fairly sure it doesn't come back up, but good to know that we have a tumbler knife in the Wheel of Time.
So yeah, it was a really hot dagger, and I think it caught a barn on fire. At least according to the rumors, which I think is another interesting part about that section of them traveling, is they hear several rumors about the ineffective dark friend that they ran into. We haven't talked about Piter.
I just want to go over the events of what happened to Piter, which is that they go into this unnamed inn in an unnamed town, both of which are weird for Robert Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait, sorry, the town isn't unnamed. I don't remember what the name of the town is, though.
Rand
but it's an
doesn't
unnamed
either.
inn. And they sit down, and then somebody else sits down with them and is like, hi.
Can I sit here?
Can I sit here? And Matt's just like, you're a dark friend, aren't you? And he's like, what? No, I definitely am not. And Matt's just like, yeah, you're a dark friend. Nobody but dark friends wants to talk to us. And he's like, yeah, I'm a dark friend. You should come with me. And then Matt punches him.
No, Rand punches him.
Okay, Rand
because they're trying to get away, and they're just like, we're just going to leave now. And he's like, no, wait. And he grabs Rand by the shoulder, and then Rand just
decks him in the middle of this inn.
He's punching Nazis, and I'm here for it.
And Piter, the most ineffective dark friend ever, goes, you wouldn't punch me. Or I don't even remember what exactly he says, but he's like, you should join the Great Lord of the Dark. He yells it to an inn full of people.
Which then henceforth sparks all of the rumors.
It's like punching a Nazi and then who's trying to be stealthy about being a Nazi, and then the Nazi's just like, Heil Hitler. Like, what the fuck, man?
So yeah, they're traveling around and they just hear all these crazy rumors about a dark friend. And they hear one about like there's 30 dark friends. They hear another rumor that just like there was 30 dark friends and a barn caught on fire as they continue to travel through these towns. So I think it just like...
You do get a little bit of the rumor telephone game going on here.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of rumor telephone going.
The last thing I think we should touch on, and this isn't even very much of a thing at this point, is creepy Balsamon dreams.
Yes.
Rand has a couple.
Rand has a couple. Rand also has lots of dreams. One about Balsamon, but I think only 2 of them are actually Balsamon dreams. The other ones are fever dreams.
Yeah.
He has a bunch of fever dreams when he's sick about Balsamon, Egwene, Moraine, Tom, Lan, and they all like come to him in a vision, which was interesting.
And we
but
are
then-
fairly sure that these things aren't actual Balsamon dreams because Matt shares the 2 real ones.
Right. So the first one, I think, is the only one that I remember going into detail, is the one where he has a dream about him being back in the Four Kings, and Balsamon basically says, the eye of the world will never serve you. And I still don't know what the eye of the world is, and I really wish I had another flag color or had started flagging the eye of the world mentions in a specific color so that I could count them.
Yeah.
But
There have been several.
There have been several, and I read too slow to go back through and find them, so...
We're only 3 episodes from finding out.
About what the eye of the world is?
Yeah.
It's at the very end of the book?
It's at the end of the book.
Cool.
So read and find out. Part 2 of this episode. Part like 6 total so far.
I feel like it's been more than that, but...
Is it? I have no idea. I don't actually keep count.
I don't either. We should keep count.
That number would get very high very quickly. It's a 14-book series.
I think
But yes.
also, like, I feel like we should only count the ones that are actually on the podcast, because sometimes you tell that to me off podcast, which is why I might be thinking that the number is higher, because
that's probably why you're thinking the number is higher. Yeah. It's a creepy dream, and it ends with Balsamon chucking fire at Rand's face, because that's Balsamon's favorite thing to do, is throw fire at people's face. And interestingly, and I caught this because I had never caught this before, Matt and Rand have slightly different dreams.
Yeah, they've had slightly different dreams several times.
But we've never had it confirmed that the 2 of them are having different dreams. Rand gets a face full of fire, and Matt has its eyes cut.
Which is probably to do with the fact that he's been blinded.
Yeah, it could be. Like, clearly Perrin's having entirely different dreams because there's a whole wolf aspect to Perrin's dreams now.
I think it's probably Balsamon just channeling into their other fears and whatnot. He's probably channeling into the other things that are specifically going on with these boys. And I mean, at that point, Rand had channeled lightning, so fire.
So you claim.
So I claim. I talk with a lot of conviction. I don't know that I haven't read far enough, so I don't actually know.
This is book 1 of 14.
This is book 1 of 14. I could be entirely wrong, but I just always speak with confidence when it comes to my convictions about plot.
Yes. Yes, you do.
It is what it is. And then Perrin's got all the weird wolf stuff going on, so that's why wolves are pulling into his dream. And then Matt was blinded, so he's got stuff with his eyes going on.
Yeah.
Also, Balsamon has stuff going on with his eyes, so that could just be picking
has
up.
big old fire eyes.
Big old fire eyes. And so I feel like, throwing fire at Rand's face could be being like, hey, have fire eyes like me. Have fire eyes like me.
Because his whole thing is join me.
Join me.
You're going to join me. If you do it when you're alive, it'll be better for you, but you'll do it when you're dead either way, because I am Lord of the Grave.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that is kind of a badass title, but
It is a little bit.
It's not the way you convince a teenager to join you.
I mean, it depends on the teenager.
Most teenagers. If you go up to a random teenager and you're like, hey, I'm Lord of Death, do you want to join me? Okay, maybe if you ask a lot of teenagers our age or teenagers now, they'll be like, yeah, I'm okay with dying.
Millennial death humor.
But if you ask them when this came out, they'd be like, no, I don't want to die.
But a couple decades earlier, they also would have said the same thing.
Like, they also would have not wanted to die, because the millennial lust for death is relatively new.
I feel like there's a whole lot of fatalist humor in earlier generations as well.
Yeah, but they didn't actually want to die.
Well, I mean, they didn't have endless student loan debt.
Yeah, that's true. So much debt. Anyway, let's take a hard left turn and go for our recurring segments.
Yes.
Number 1 of which is Min's aura readings.
The weird prophetic aura dreams.
Yes. They're not dreams. They're just auras.
Whatever. It's just the title that I'm calling it today. Yeah, so the other piece of information that makes me think that Rand was the one that channeled the lightning and not Matt is because Min saw him surrounded by what? Lightning. She saw it hitting him, around him, coming out of him.
That's more than one lightning bolt, though. She saw a lightning storm.
There was a lightning storm.
I guess. That's fair. That's really the only update we have, because it was pretty much it was literally just Rand and Matt.
And then
dealing
still
with
the dagger.
of the Four Kings.
And still the dagger.
The dagger is ever present. It's
ever
true.
present.
Second recurring segment, ships. Any ship updates?
No.
Okay.
Unless Matt with a blanket and a hug from his mom is a ship.
That can be a ship. Matt just needs a hug.
Matt just needs a hug.
Matt plus
Matt-
a hug.
Matt needs friendship.
Yes, Matt
I think
needs
I really
friendship.
did, like, the ship update of this episode is just I really like the friendship between Rand and Matt in this section because
The
they're
ship
just...
update is Matt and a friend.
Yeah.
All right.
Favorite moments.
Yeah, I
No?
have two. We share one of them,
Yeah.
which is Matt taking care of Rand when he's sick. Because he has a bunch of, like, he's rather reassuring to Rand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very nice, and I like that whole friendship, and I wish we got more of it, just across the whole 14-book series. The other one is at the very beginning, when they're hitching a ride with the guy who takes them to the Four Kings. This guy goes on for like 2 pages about how times are tough, and he can't help them aside from giving them a ride somewhere. And then he's like, my sons have scarves, you can take these 2 scarves. And they wear the scarves until they get to Caemlyn.
This is the second guy who's given them scarves, too.
Who else gave them scarves?
In the first section, in the last section, some random man gave them scarves that they wore to cover their face in the dust.
Oh, I did not pick up on that.
Yeah, I was wondering if they. My brain goes, did he talk about that guy earlier and forget to cut it out in editing? And so he talked about him twice. Because that's some shit I would do. Is like, oh, you know, I used this element earlier, but I think it would actually be better here, and then you forget to cut it out of the first part.
Maybe.
Or just 2 guys gave him scarves, but yeah, they just talked about, this is the second guy to give him scarves.
Yeah, but I just like it because he really does. He goes on for actually 2 or 3 full pages about how he can't help them, and times are rough, and he needs to be able to feed his family, or else
And
he'd give
so
them
he can't,
food.
well, yeah, like you can't come back with me because people are clearly after you. That is another move in this segment, or this section of the book, is that like everyone knows that someone's after these boys at this point.
And-
Yet they're still helping them anyway.
Right. And he gives them scarves, and it's just nice, and it's like, okay, there are nice people in the world, and then we get to the Dark Friend Fest. So those are my favorite moments. What are your favorite moments?
I think it's so weird to say that it's my favorite moment because it's not really a lighthearted moment, but just the whole Matt arc. I think it's a really interesting delve into his character about just how vulnerable he is and the constant worry that Rand is going to leave him and him being homesick, and then the panic attack that he has when they get into Caemlyn, when he's like clamping, he's like shouting, and he's on sensory overload and it's causing a panic attack. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a really interesting mode for Matt because it's not what he's been the whole time.
It has not been. Yeah, this was Not the Beginning, episode 7, chapters 32 through 35. Next episode, 2 weeks from now, chapters 36 through 40. I wish I could tell you that we get a lot more information about Rand and Matt and Caemlyn, but I've looked ahead and I know that we do not. It shifts focus a little bit here.
That's okay with me.
Things are starting to come together, though.
Yeah. So that's Not the Beginning. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.